Cole. Gentlemen of the Emerald City, Book 2. Written by L.A. Witt. Narrated by Michael Ferraiuolo. Chapter 1. Parker. "Good game, rookie." Welch clapped my arm so hard I almost dropped my drink. "How's it feel, getting your first goal?" I grinned, even as I put down the glass he'd nearly knocked out of my hands. "It's about damn time." He and some of the other guys howled with laughter. "You hear this guy?" He slung an arm around my shoulders, almost toppling me this time. "A month into his rookie season, and it's about time." They laughed and cheered, and my cheeks were on fire. But I was also smiling so much my face hurt. It was true, the season had only started a month ago. Plus, I'd barely played the first several games. I'd just been frustrated. With that big old 0 in my career stats, I'd still felt like the kid trying to play with the big guys. Even getting that assist when Deacon scored 3 or 4 games ago hadn't been enough. But tonight had been different. 7 minutes into the second period, the red light had been all mine. The goal horn, the hometown crowd roaring to their feet, the word goal and bright lights all around the stadium. It had been mine. The moment these guys had started hugging me and high-fiving me had been the moment my place on the Seattle Breakers had finally felt real. I was still flying high now as we celebrated at a bar a couple of blocks from the arena. No one was drinking real hard tonight, not when we had to be at the airport at fuck this o'clock in the morning to fly to Houston. Still, the guys had insisted that, like any major milestone, no rookie's first goal went uncelebrated, and they were buying everything I drank tonight. Good God, was this real? The Seattle Breakers were my teammates? And they were buying me drinks? As a kid, I'd been a huge fan of Phil Henderson, the legendary center for Atlanta, and later for Denver. And now he was my head coach. Matt Smith's photo was all over the place at my university, where he'd been one of the best defensemen ever to wear those colors, and now he was Smitty, the guy who snarked at me and helped me with my backhand. I'd studied Ethan Wright's techniques, and now he was my roommate on road trips. I'd idolized Scott Deacon, though he'd turned out to be a bit of a dick in person, Alexei Vasilyev, Dmitry Turgenev, and Ty Warner, and now, how were we all wearing the same jersey? How are these guys clinking their glasses against mine and telling me nice job, and reminding me that my goal had meant the difference between winning tonight and going into overtime? It had been overwhelming when I'd first been drafted by the team, especially when they'd sent me straight to the roster, instead of having me cool my heels on the farm team. Tonight, it was downright dizzying. I'm a Seattle Breaker. I'm their teammate. Oh my God, this is real. Drink in hand, I mingled, still marveling that I was part of the team and not one of the fans. I mean, I was a fan, but I was... Oh, Jesus. Was this ever going to feel real? Or would I always feel like the kid tagging along with his big brother's team? My drink eventually ran out, and I went up to the bar to get some water. I'd barely picked up the glass before someone sidled up next to me. "Hey, you're Dane Parker, right? The rookie that scored?" Something about his grin made my heart speed up. Swallowing, I nodded, and I smiled back timidly. "Yeah, that was me. First pro goal." "Nice one." He smiled, too, but there was still something in his eyes that had me even more nervous than I'd been before my first pro game. I knew what it was, too, especially when he lowered his voice to a sultry whisper and asked, "How would you feel about scoring twice tonight?" Instantly, my mouth went dry, and I must have been as red as the goal light. My starstruck celebratory mood vanished, in favor of feeling conspicuous and embarrassed. I took a quick swig of water, then cleared my throat. "I'm flattered, I really am, but I have to be on the road at the crack of dawn." With my glass, I gestured at my teammates. "Heading out for another game, in another city. I laughed uncomfortably. Never ends, you know? Undeterred, he narrowed his eyes a little. We can be quick. He nodded sharply toward the back of the bar, and my gaze went to the sign for the men's room. Oh, God. He was hot, too. Tall and lean, bearing just enough of a resemblance to Antoine Martel, a player I'd had a crush on since forever, to make me wish like hell I had the confidence to say yes. Somehow I managed to croak, maybe another time? He held my gaze, his eyes asking if I was sure. No, I was not. But yes, I was. Because I totally wanted him, but no, not a chance. With a clearly disappointed half shrug, he backed off. Maybe another time. Then he turned to go, and I got a look at his jean-clad ass. Oh, suppressing a groan, I closed my eyes and slouched against the bar. He was cute as hell, and I would have loved to spend the night celebrating in bed with him, or even a few minutes with him in a men's room stall. I could still feel every second I'd spent on the ice, but adrenaline was keeping me going, and I really, really wanted to use that between the sheets. I couldn't, though. No way. Dane, my dude. Smitty appeared beside me and put a hand on my shoulder. Tell me I did not just see you turning down that hot piece of ass. My face was on fire. I couldn't even look at him. It was great that everyone, well, almost everyone, on the team was cool with 4 of us being openly queer, but this was getting into maybe a little too cool with it territory. Well, gesturing after the hot guy, I muttered, He's all yours. Smitty didn't move, though he pulled his hand back. He tilted his head and eyed me. You just got your first pro goal. Nodding in the direction the guy had gone, he added, Don't you want to score again? Oh, ha, ha. Everyone was going to use that line tonight, weren't they? Fuck. And yeah, I did. I seriously did. I was also mortified that I'd not only let the guy go, but also that Smitty had noticed. Smitty put both hands on my shoulders and looked right at me. You're a professional athlete. If you don't think you can have any ass you want, well, it's not that. I dropped my gaze. Well, I definitely didn't believe I could have any man I wanted, but that wasn't the issue here. His voice softened a little. What's wrong? I chewed my lip. Hockey players were notorious for grabbing onto anything they could use to rib their teammates, but there were lines. The other 3 gay players on the Breakers, including Smitty, had made it clear from day one that they had my back. They knew how tough it could be as an out queer player, even in this day and age. I appreciated that. Kid, Smitty herded me away from the crowd, and we found a place in the back hallway that was relatively private. When he faced me, his expression was completely serious. The teasing was gone, replaced by sincere concern. What's up, man? You can tell me if it's none of my business, but the vibe you're giving off says something's up. How the hell was I supposed to explain any of this? Ugh. But Smitty was a good guy. He'd been one of the first to really reach out and get to know me. I was pretty sure it was for the same reason Wright and Warner had. They'd all known I was queer, and they'd wanted to rally around me and make sure I knew I wasn't alone. I appreciated that. I'd become fast friends with all 3 of them, especially Wright and Smitty, so if there was anyone on the team I could admit this to. Sighing, I let my shoulders fall. Promise this stays between us? God, I sounded as stupid as I felt. Smitty's humor stayed gone, and he nodded solemnly. Yeah, kid, what's on your mind? I moistened my lips and glanced back toward the crowd we'd abandoned. Then I looked at Smitty again. I'm afraid to hook up with one of these guys because as soon as I do, they're going to realize, was I really going to say it out loud? Really? Realize what? Smitty nudged. Come on, it's between us. Promise. I swallowed, and even I barely heard my voice as I whispered, I'm a virgin. Smitty obviously heard because I'd never seen his eyes that wide before. Are you shitting me? Renewed heat rushed into my cheeks. I immediately regretted telling him, and I avoided his eyes. Yeah, I know. Oh, everyone starts getting laid in high school, and I'm 25, and I've never... Hey, relax. He squeezed my shoulder. It just surprised me, that's all. I laughed bitterly. See what I mean? Everyone expects... I closed my eyes and let my head fall back against the wall. Fuck, I'm so pathetic. Nah, you're not. Smitty paused. Let me ask you this. Do you want to get laid? Yes, I said without hesitation as I looked up at him. But I can't just go hook up with someone. Raking a hand through my hair, I sighed heavily. Any guy I'm with is going to expect me to be as good in bed as I am on the ice. He'll think I'm a loser for making it this far in life without ever doing anything. Maybe not. Smitty looked around and lowered his voice. Listen, I may have a solution for you. Just promise you'll hear me out and not shoot it down. I raised an eyebrow. God, he wasn't going to suggest we have sex, was he? Because he was a nice guy, and he was hot, but I wasn't fucking a teammate. Not even if it was a charity fuck or a sympathy fuck. Ugh, especially not if it was like that. Hear me out? He asked. I nodded mutely. Okay, so, if I were you, I'd hire someone. Hire? I blinked. Like a prostitute? The word came out as a squeak. Well, an escort, but he half shrugged. Trust me, you wouldn't be the only one who uses them. Hell, I use them. You do? He nodded. Hey, sometimes I just want to get laid without playing all the games on Tinder, or he gestured at the bar. And the buddy who introduced me to them, that's how he lost his virginity. Seriously? Mm-hmm. I mean, he'd been with women, but in his 30s, he started realizing maybe he was actually gay. He was embarrassed to try being with a man for the first time, so he figured if he paid someone, they'd at least be discreet, you know? Oh. And I swallowed. Is that even safe? Yep. Background checks, the whole works. Smitty held out his hand. Give me your phone. I hesitated. He huffed and wiggled his fingers. Just give it to me, I'll find the app for you. What you do with it is none of my business. Still dubious, I unlocked my phone and handed it over. He tapped a few things on the screen, then handed it back. There was a new icon for an app that was downloading. I was suddenly, irrationally certain someone would walk by and see the little icon, so I stuffed my phone in my pocket. Isn't that, illegal? It can be. He didn't sound worried. But the app is totally legal because it's an escort service. You're paying for their company, not for sex. Oh. Huh. And like I said, they do background checks, so it can take like 24 hours for you to be able to actually meet someone. But they're usually way faster than that. And they're emphatic that if someone harasses or assaults one of their guys, they'll report it to the authorities. So they have to be operating on the up and up, you know? Chewing my lip, I nodded. Okay. I'll give it a look. Thanks. Don't mention it. He clapped my shoulder and nudged me back toward the bar. Now come on. You've got a goal to celebrate. That brought my spirits back to life. I still wasn't sure about this whole escort service thing, and I felt weird just having the app on my phone, but I'd worry about that later. For now, Smitty was right. I had a goal to celebrate. Lying awake in a Houston hotel, I thumbed the edge of my phone. Wright was asleep on the other bed. Nothing short of Armageddon would wake him up, so I didn't worry too much about my phone glowing or an app making noise, but I still didn't turn on the screen. The app Smitty had downloaded for me last night was burning a hole in my phone case. I'd been itching for a minute to actually look at it, but I hadn't had time. The party had gone late. I'd needed to sleep. Then I'd overslept and had to rush out so I didn't miss my flight. And after that, I hadn't had enough privacy to open up the app. Not until now. I glanced at Wright again. He was out cold. Half an hour ago, he'd been FaceTiming with his boyfriend, and just thinking about that gave me a little pang of envy. They were so adorable together. They were both hot as hell, especially Luca, but they were just so damn cute and ridiculously in love. I wanted that. I wanted someone to make me feel whatever it was that always left Wright smiling like that long after they'd hung up. And how the hell am I going to get to that level when I've never even touched a guy? Cringing, I sighed into the stillness of our room. I was probably overthinking it. Sex wasn't everything. There had to be a guy out there somewhere who was willing to overlook my lack of experience. The problem was that I couldn't get past it. I was so embarrassed and felt so ridiculous still being a virgin. I turned my phone over and over in my hand. Smitty had offered up a solution. I had no idea how I felt about it, but I did know how I felt about being stuck in virgin purgatory. Oh, hell, why not? I pulled up the cover so I could look at the phone without shining a beacon of brightness that might wake up Wright. Not that much could wake him, but it would be just my luck that he'd magically turned into a light sleeper tonight, and I absolutely didn't want him asking what I was doing. I muted everything on the phone just in case the app had any bells or whistles, and then with my heart in my throat, I went to the folder where I'd hidden the new app. It was a gemstone, like a diamond, except green. Below that, Gentleman of the Emerald City. Okay, so it was an emerald. Got it. And looking closely, there was a tiny image of the Space Needle tucked inside the icon. Cute. So was I going to just stare at the icon all night and think about the design, or tap it and see what the app was all about? My stomach somersaulted. Was this really how I was going to do this? Oh, well, at this point, the alternatives were staying a virgin indefinitely or hooking up with a stranger on Tinder and hoping for the best. The first option frustrated me as much as the second terrified me. So I tapped it. There were some cursory user agreement things, and I read them thoroughly because I'd taken pre-law classes, and also because I'd seen the Human Centipede episode of South Park and was paranoid about what kinds of horrible things were tucked into these agreements. Not that I expected an actual clause allowing the company to kidnap me and use me to make a human centipede, but I wasn't a big fan of having my data sold or my location tracked, especially not from an app I was using to find sex. Oh, God, was I doing this? Was this like a mail-order bride thing, except hookups? Netflix for dicks, and DoorDash for ass? Rubhub? My own thoughts made me chuckle, though I kept it quiet. I was being ridiculous, and I knew it, but it kept me distracted from how utterly bizarre it was to be reading and now agreeing to a user agreement for an escort service. Filling in the background check thing gave me pause. The user agreement had made it clear that my data wouldn't be sold and that it was encrypted like 12 times over, right? I read it again just to be sure. The last thing I needed was them splattering it all over the press that I hired escorts, though they'd never said anything about Smitty, and he seemed to dig this company enough that he was recommending it. I wondered if he got kickbacks for that, like 20% off your next blowjob if you referred a friend? Maybe that would be the next multi-level marketing scheme everyone I went to high school with posted about on Facebook. Come to our escort party. To become a distributor, you just have to buy 500 blowjobs to sell, and then you start getting paid whenever distributors you sign on buy or sell blowjobs. You'll own your own business, set your own hours, and make money hand over fist. I had to cover my mouth to muffle the snort. I was taking this seriously, I really was, but Jesus fuck, this was the first time I'd ever even considered paying for sex. And I might have been just a wee bit sort of nervous as hell. Collecting myself, I continued through the app. I submitted the information for the background check and put in a credit card. It was a low-limit card, so if someone decided to run off with it, they wouldn't get very far. And with all the logistics sorted out, there was nothing left to do but see what the app had to offer. Or rather, who the app had to offer. The search function had all kinds of criteria, or I could just browse. I narrowed the geographic part to within 20 miles of Seattle, but that was it. And, wow, these guys were hot as hell. I'd kind of imagined they'd all be in their 20s, but the ages were all over the place. Minimum was 21, but I saw a few in their late 30s and even into their 40s. One named Marco caught my eye. He was in his late 30s with a hint of gray in his hair, and he was seriously sexy. Something about a silver fox guiding me in bed was, yes. I added him to my favorites. Another named Hunter had eyes I could get lost in, but there was a note about limited availability. One look at his calendar, oh God. trying to coordinate so I had a free evening on the rare night he was available. That would probably involve, algebra. Andre was a couple of years older than me, and he was cute. Reading between the lines of his profile, though, he was exclusively a top. Bottoming kind of scared me. I wanted to try it, but I didn't want it to be the only option, and I also wanted to try topping, so maybe not him. I moved to the next profile and, oh hello. His name was Cole, and he was white with dark blonde hair, deep brown eyes, and full lips I could stare at all night. He had cheekbones for days, eyebrows that screamed sass, and a get-over-here-and-take-your-pants-off grin that made my heart race. One look at him and I forgot all about the other guys. I didn't even need to read his profile. Just take my money, dude. Except, oh, fuck. If he was an escort, then he was experienced as all hell. Even if this was his job, I couldn't shake the certainty that he'd be fighting not to laugh in my face. "You mean to tell me," I could hear him saying, "that you're a top-tier pro athlete and you've never managed to get a single piece of ass? Really?" Ugh, that was mortifying. On the other hand, since he was getting paid, he would probably put on a professional face and not make me feel like shit. And once I'd gone a round or two with him, then I wouldn't be an inexperienced loser who'd make an idiot of myself when I met someone I wasn't paying. So, did I really have much to lose here? A little dignity, some cash, and my virginity. And I wanted to lose one of those things. Fine. I'd schedule something with him and then I'd see what happened. Because I had absolutely no idea what to expect beyond feeling like a complete jackass for needing to hire someone for this. It was like bringing in a tree removal service because nobody else would volunteer to touch the unsightly virginity tree, taking up the whole damn yard or something. Whatever. Yeah, it was definitely time to do something about it. So, with my heart in my throat, I tapped the icon for Book This Gentleman. After going through a few steps, including confirming my credit card, it was done. The background check would be complete by the time I was back in town. Then I'd meet Cole, and I'd finally get rid of this pesky virginity. Chapter 2. Cole. This guy had to be a pro athlete. Okay, so I had no way of actually knowing that, but time and experience had me placing bets in that direction as soon as I pulled into the parking garage beneath his building. For one thing, the handful of pictures he'd uploaded showed an utterly ripped physique. Athlete or hardcore gym rat, for short. And then there was the place I was meeting him. The condos in this area were relatively inexpensive by Seattle standards, which still meant they cost a pretty penny, but they weren't setting anyone back by 7 figures. That sleek black Porsche in the parking space reserved for his unit stood out amongst the more everyday models around it, a Lexus R3, some Beamers, a Mercedes. So, if he was a pro athlete, he was either newly signed, splurging on a shiny-ass sports car, but not quite ready to drop a few mil on a mansion in Bellevue or Medina, or he was a more seasoned player who wasn't so hot with money, made enough to buy the car but didn't hold on to cash long enough to buy one of the swankier places where his teammates lived. This could also be a crash pad where the guy hid hookups from his wife, which again seemed to be a common MO among athletes who'd hired me. Again, that was pure speculation on my part. They were just patterns I'd picked up after working for Emerald City for a while. For all I knew, tonight's client was a cryptocurrency tycoon, or an exec for one of the software companies who also devoted a lot of time at the gym. My money was still on an athlete, though. Call it a gut feeling. I suppressed a grumble and put on a smile as I got out of my car to head for the elevator. Athletes were not my favorite clientele. The egos were just... One of my semi-regulars was a literal rock star, and his ego had nothing on some of these guys. My ex, Bryce, thought it was kind of funny. Guys who were rolling money and thought they were God's gift to everything, but they still had to hire ass. I was more inclined to think they liked hiring ass because it was a way of flaunting their money and power. If Bryce ended up working for gentlemen of the Emerald City, which he was seriously considering, he'd find out what I was talking about. He'd understand why I side-eyed guys like that. Eh, they were still more fun than a boardroom exec. Those guys. Seriously. I took the stairs up to the second floor, fussing with my shirt and cuffs along the way. Maybe I should have worn a tie. That would give me something to play with and keep my hands busy. Well, whatever. I just tried to keep my mind fixed on how this client was probably another entitled rich asshole or an athlete who thought the world of himself. That was a lot easier than letting my thoughts go down the rabbit hole of, but what if he's... That could have me sweating bullets and ready to turn tail and run. I'd only had a handful of bad experiences as an escort, 2 that were really bad, and that mental spiral could throw me off my game. Way better to focus on what kind of just call me Adonis sports ball player I was about to meet. The athletes weren't all egotistical assholes either. My best friend, Luca, was blissfully happy with the hockey player who'd hired him over the summer and then fallen madly in love with him. On the other hand, Luca had also had bad experiences with 2 other hockey players, including one who was apparently still active on the roster. The jerk couldn't book Luca anymore since Luca was no longer working as a gentleman, but he was still out there. I paused in the hallway. Oh shit. Was that this guy? Had he started a new profile? Oh, I suppressed a groan. Fuck. Because I wasn't touching that asshole with someone else's dick. He tried to book me once, and after reading the gentleman's eyes only comments on his profile, I'd made myself very unavailable. Except tonight's booking had come from someone with a new profile, and he was younger than that other guy, if I remembered right. Plus, he'd have been hard-pressed to get a whole new profile past Anita, so no, this client wasn't that jackwagon. Hopefully he wasn't like Kim either. Maybe he'd be like that one hockey player I had been with a few times. That guy was fun as hell. Only one way to find out. At the client's door, I paused, pushed my shoulders back, and made sure my face was pleasant. Then I knocked. Footsteps on the other side raised some hairs on my neck. Gotta love those preemptive nerves. And the click of the deadbolt prompted a nervous swallow. But by the time the door opened, my professional expression was back in place. As soon as I saw him, I almost had to laugh at how accurate my prediction had been. He was about my height, not quite 6 foot, and way more built. No one got thighs or an ass like that from just working out at the gym. And considering the Seattle Breakers t-shirt stretched across his broad chest, the hockey sticks on the wall above his entertainment center, and the muted hockey game on the huge flat screen, I was pretty sure I could narrow down which sport he played. He was white, with dark, wavy hair that probably looked hot as hell when it was damp with sweat. He had a prominent scar over the bridge of his nose, another on his chin. His features were sharp, Slavic, I thought, and his eyes were gorgeous, gray, and shy? That was new. And that shyness wasn't just in his eyes. Blushing, he dropped his gaze and gestured for me to come in. You're Cole, right? I am. I stepped into the condo. Parker? He nodded. Come on in. I left my shoes by the door beside his, and we moved into the living room. Surreptitiously watching him, I reminded myself that Luca had ended up leaving Emerald City to be with his hockey player client-turned-boyfriend, and I distinctly remembered him fondly reminiscing about how shy Ethan had been when they'd first met. I decided shy could be promising, better than some of the arrogant dickhead athletes who always seemed to hire me, that was for sure. We sat down on Parker's couch and he turned off the television. Though the game had been on mute, the condo seemed even quieter after the screen went dark, as if the visual noise had been enough to fill in some of the silence. Folding and unfolding his hands in his lap, he glanced my way, anxiety radiating from him. He laughed, letting even more nerves show. I've never done this, I don't really know. Keeping my voice pleasant and non-judgmental, I asked, Is this your first time hiring an escort? Parker laughed self-consciously and avoided my gaze. Oh, yeah, you could say that. He ran a hand through his hair and still didn't look at me. This is my first time with anyone? At all? My breath hitched. Is it? He nodded. One of my friends recommended hiring someone because I His cheeks darkened again, and he stared down at his wringing hands. Christ, it sounded like a good idea, but now Hey, I said quietly. Relax. I'm here to give you whatever you want. All you have to do is tell me what that is. I want to get laid, he said with a laugh, and then he covered his face with his hands and groaned. Oh my God. I stared at him for a moment. I was so used to athletes who were farther up their own asses than I'd ever get. This guy, he threw me off completely. It was hard to imagine him as a hockey player. Even knowing what I did about Luca's boyfriend, it was difficult to reconcile this painfully shy, nervous dude with the kind of aggression that their sport demanded. Pushing all the surprise out of my voice and expression, I said, "It's nothing to be embarrassed about." He dropped his hands into his lap and shot me a skeptical look. "It really isn't," I said. "But if it's a big deal to you to get past it, I can help you with that." Though his nerves hung on, some of the tension eased in his features and his shoulders. "Yeah?" I nodded. "Plenty of guys hire men like me their first time." "At 25? He asked, dryly. 25, 30, 35? I shrugged. 45? 40? He blinked. "Are you serious?" "I am. I can't give you details about him, but I can tell you that I've definitely been hired by at least one man who was in his mid-40s and still a virgin." Parker's lips formed a silent O. I watched him, then decided to tip my hand a little more in the name of making him more comfortable. "I was 21. His eyebrows shot up. "You were?" I could feel myself blushing as I nodded. And it was tough, putting myself out there when everyone around me seemed to have tons of experience. Parker nodded slowly. "Yeah, exactly." He blew out a breath and sat back against the sofa cushions. "I think it's worse because of..." He gestured at the hockey gear on the walls. "I finally made it. I suddenly have fans throwing themselves at me, and instead of thinking it's the coolest thing ever, I'm terrified to hook up with any of them because they'll know." "Are you afraid they might tell someone?" I asked softly. "Or that you won't be able to perform enough to satisfy them?" He swallowed hard. "Both? I can't even tell you which is worse, just both." I smiled, trying to come across as gentle and understanding. "For the record, I'm legally bound to not breathe a word of this to anyone. Even if I wasn't, I wouldn't." I shook my head. "And I'm here tonight because you want something from me, not because you have to perform. So all you have to do is tell me what you want, and then enjoy it." Parker pushed out a ragged breath. "Oh, thanks. That sounds really good." I reached across the space between us and put a tentative hand on his knee. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply through his nose. "This all right?" I asked. Yeah." He licked his beautiful, slim lips. "Yeah, it's good." I let my hand rest more firmly on top of his leg, trying like hell not to be distracted by the cable-tight and seriously sculpted muscles beneath his jeans. Eyes still closed, he shifted on the cushion, the couch's discreet squeak seeming to echo through the condo. Below his belt, his jeans had definitely gotten tighter. "I'm yours for the night," I whispered. "Whatever you want, say the word." "I'm a virgin in every way." He opened his eyes and looked right in mine. "Please tell me you can help with that."